Hey guys, welcome back to the MSR Workshop. So I am going to do another unboxing today of a product that was sent to me in the mail for review. So let's check it out. So the product that was sent to me for review is a product that I have sort of kind of wanted and looked at, but I've just never bothered to buy, and that is a pop-up outlet. Now this is a little bit different than any standard pop-up outlet in the sense that it also has a built-in wireless charger on it. That makes it a little bit extra cool and was a little bit appealing to me. So let's get this unboxed. First impressions when you take this out of the box is this thing is huge. Yeah, I know what you're all thinking.
That's what she said.
To activate this, and this by the way is the wireless charging on the top. It's a flush mount almost. Press down.
No, God, please, no, no, no.
And you have your 3 outlets and 2 USB plugs on the top, and then you have an on-off switch, which I assume is lighted. I have not plugged this in. And that says 1500 watts. Don't know where they're getting that number from, but we'll just say okay. To close this back, you'll just push straight down and click. It's a little bit of a push, but not too bad. Now one thing you want to make sure is when this thing goes up, it actually pulls the power cord up inside this. So if the power cord gets bunched inside, you'll notice this is a little bit hard to push down. You may just have to reach underneath if this is accessible for you and just tug on this cord a little bit, and then this should push right back down. Now, because this is such a large unit, I was not expecting it to be this large. You're going to have a hard time finding places to install this. I'm going to be completely honest, because you are hiding all of this underneath a counter. So you really can't put it on a nightstand because you've got to hide all this unless you don't have any drawers below you, but most people have drawers. A kitchen counter might work if you hide it in a corner, but you also got to watch out for what's behind it. If you have shelves, if you have drawers that go in and out, you've got to put it somewhere where your drawers aren't going to hit it, or your shelves, you got to make sure you've got enough space in between your shelves to even put it somewhere. So you are kind of limited. So this is something more for, say, a large conference table, or for a work desk that has no drawers underneath, or some of those adjustable height ones that people use for computer gaming, or whatever. If you have a workbench in your garage, this might work good for that. It gives you some accessible outlets. So we're going to try and find somewhere that we can utilize this that will work good, and we will be right back. So before we get started installing this, we're going to go ahead and briefly look over the instructions, which are very brief. There's not much to them, and it really doesn't say what the power rating is on that wireless charger. Now, reading over, this is use American power outlet of 110, 125 volts, 10 to 13 amps, in other countries 250. So apparently it can work on a 250 volt. Of course, it's a 125 plug, so you may have to order the 250 volt one. I'm not entirely positive on that. USB ports is a 5 volt 1.2 amp or 5 volt 4.2 amp, and once again it says nothing about the wireless charging. This is before you place it. It's just telling you to not get the cord jammed underneath, and that was the thing I was saying. When you pop it up, it pulls this power cord in, so you're going to want to make sure that the power cord doesn't get bunched up underneath, or you will get it stuck. Fortunately, the directions did talk about the size of hole that you're going to need, and you're going to need a 100 millimeter cutting tool of some sorts. Now, if you don't have 100 millimeter, the next best size, because 100 millimeter stuff is a little bit difficult to find in large sizes. So you can use an American standard size of 4-inch, which actually comes out to 102 millimeters, which will be perfectly fine, and you'll be able to install that. And that is because there is a lip, so you have quite a bit of overhang and wiggle room to install it with a slightly larger bit. Now, you do have a adjustable collar that goes up and down, and kind of the cool thing that they thought about when they put this in is you do have screw holes underneath. So once you get it snugged up, you can secure it with these screw holes underneath, and that will keep this thing from unscrewing or wiggling itself out. Now, you do want to be careful when installing those screws, just because this housing is plastic, so you don't want to over tighten it and risk cracking it. So let's go get this drilled and installed and see how it works. So after much deliberation and deciding where I wanted to mount this giant thing here, I've actually decided to mount it right here. Where is right here? This is the outfeed table of my table saw. So we are not going to do it in a sense that we're just going to drill a hole and mount it, because I need to be able to use my outfeed table and have it be perfectly flat. So I am going to need to recess this ever so slightly so this sits down in a recess and it is not affected by the top of my thing here on my outfeed table. So what we're going to do is I have created a template on my laser. So I have created 3 circles. Well, yeah, 3 circles. I have created the outside diameter, which is 113.78, I believe. And this is the exact outside diameter as the recess of this. So this will fit right down in this hole that I drill. But I'm not just going to drill a giant hole and be done with it. The first hole is I have to drill is this 100 millimeter or 102 millimeter, which is a 4-inch hole. So I'm going to drill a 4-inch hole that goes all the way through. Then, because I've got my template, I'm going to lock this template to the table. I'm going to use this as a guide, and I'll know to use a router bit, and I can recess and just do a recess so I can drop this down ever so slightly more so it sits perfectly flush across the table. So I'm very nervous about this, but fingers crossed we're going to do this. And one last thing is I created a hole in the center. That's going to help me line my center up perfectly. So when I have all of these 3 circles inside of each other, the first one is going to be my center hole. I'm going to start that hole. Then I'm going to be able to take these out, not having to worry about damaging this, drill this down, and I have gotten my center lined up with this circle here, so I know this is going to be centered. All right, so I have used some of this fast cap double-sided tape that I had left over from marking a tape measure. So this should hold this down really securely, and it shouldn't move on me. So now that I've started my center hole, I can go ahead and take that off, line my pilot hole back up, and just start drilling. So at this point, if you are mounting this, say, in a conference table or a desk or something, you can just drop your outlet in the table and use your little mounting circle to screw underneath and tighten it down and be done. And that's all you're going to have to do. Obviously plug it in. But since we are mounting this completely flush in a table like we see here, now this is just my template, we actually need to cut a recess just a little bit below the table. And that's why we made this larger circle, which this would fit into. And that is going to be where a flush trim router bit is going to run along the edge for a reference. So we went out and got a flush trim router bit, and we got the smallest one we could find just because we need something that doesn't have very much depth on it. And so we are using 1/4 inch shank, 1/2 inch cutting diameter, 1/4 inch cutting length. So when we set this up, we just have the right amount and just enough bearing, because if this was any longer, it would cut too deep in here. And the way that we're going to set the depth is you're basically going to stack 2 pieces of wood on top of each other. So when our protrusion is sticking out, we have the bottom that's able to touch the edge of that template, and the top of our bit is just going to be just barely below the top of this piece of wood, and we should be good to go. So let's get to cutting. So we'll peel this off. Of course, this double-sided tape works really well, so I may have trouble getting it all off my table. But if we did everything correctly, this charger should sit perfectly flush underneath this table surface. All right, guys, moment of truth. Let's drop this in here. See what we did. Perfect. So now, it's not obstructing when I'm feeding a board across. It's not hitting. And if I need an outlet, say if I'm using a router or if I'm doing something at the table, because a lot of people use their table saw outfeed tables as a workbench, I have a pop-up outlet and I don't have to go find an extension cord or plug it in an outlet across the room. Now, the last and final part is just attaching our retaining ring. And it is super secure now. Then we just find somewhere to plug it in. All right, so let's give this wireless charger a shot. So it says we're 100% charged, but the screen popped on and it says it is charging with the little lightning bolt, if you can see that. So we know that it works. Well, guys, that about wraps this video up. I know this wasn't a typical installation where you would install it, say, on a conference desk or your kitchen counter, but I think I'm going to get a lot more use out of this than sticking it in my bedroom on my desk. But if you just want to stick it on a conference table or your kitchen countertop, just follow the first part of that video where I used that 4-inch hole cutting bit. You would just cut it all the way through and then secure it from the bottom, and it's that simple. But if you want to learn more about this product, I will be sure and leave a link in the description below. It'll tell you all about it and where to get it. It'll also tell you what other products this company sells, because so far I am pretty excited about using this, and the build quality looks great. But if you wouldn't mind hitting that like and subscribe button as well, and be sure and click the bell, and that'll send you notifications every time I drop a new video. But until next time, thanks guys, and stay tuned.